My name is John Watson. I studied medicine at the University of London, and after that I worked as an army doctor. When the war started in Afghanistan, I went there with my regiment. I tried to do my duty well, but after some months I was wounded in the shoulder. The wound was very serious, and I became weak and ill. The army sent me back to England. I had no family left alive, and very little money. I needed a place to live, but London was expensive. For some time I stayed in a small hotel, but soon I knew I must find cheaper rooms. One day, while I was at the Criterion Bar, I met a man I knew from medical school, Stamford. We were happy to see each other again. As we talked, I told him about my problem. I want rooms, I said, but they must not cost too much.
Strange. I know a man who is also looking for someone to share rooms. But I must warn you, he is very unusual. His name is Sherlock Holmes.
Really? I said. What is strange about him?
Well, he has very strong interests. He works day and night in the laboratory. Sometimes he does not speak for hours. He is clever, but he has ideas that ordinary people do not understand. He may be difficult to live with.
I don't mind, I said. I only want comfortable rooms that I can pay for. I don't care if my companion is strange.
All right, I will take you to him now. He is at the hospital laboratory.
We walked together to Street Bartholomew's Hospital. In one of the laboratories, a tall man was working. He was bending over a table, very excited about his experiment.
Holmes, I bring you a friend. This is Dr. Watson, who needs rooms. Perhaps you can share.
The man turned quickly, his face full of energy.
I found it. I discovered the test,
he cried, and he shook my hand strongly.
Now we can tell for sure if a stain is blood or not. This will be so important for detectives.
Then he looked straight at me. His eyes were sharp and bright.
You have been in Afghanistan, I see.
I stood there in surprise. How did he know that? This was my first meeting with Sherlock Holmes. When we first moved into our rooms at 221B Baker Street, life with Holmes was not difficult. He was quiet and regular in his habits. He got up at different times, but he was always busy. Sometimes he worked all day in his laboratory, sometimes he read books, and sometimes he went out and returned very late. I soon discovered something strange. Holmes knew some things very well, but other things he did not know at all. For example, he had excellent knowledge of chemistry, anatomy, and even different kinds of footprints or types of dirt. But when I asked him about literature, philosophy, or astronomy, he knew almost nothing. Once I mentioned the solar system and the fact that the Earth goes around the Sunday, he looked surprised and said,
What? Does it?
I was shocked. A man who did not know this simple fact. Holmes only laughed.
You see,
he explained,
my brain is like an attic. A foolish person fills his attic with all kinds of useless things. A wise man keeps only the tools he needs. What does it matter to me if the Earth goes around the sun or the sun goes around the Earth? That fact will not help me in my work, so I do not care about it.
Holmes could be very active, but also very lazy. He played the violin beautifully, sometimes for hours. He also boxed, fenced, and was strong for his slim figure. He could be cheerful, even laughing like a boy, and then suddenly silent and thoughtful for a whole day. I began to wonder, what is his work? He received many letters and telegrams. Strange visitors came to see him, some well-dressed, some poor. He went out to unknown places, but he never spoke directly about his job. One day I asked Stamford about him. Stamford said,
Holmes is a wonderful man, but you must not expect him to be like other people. He is very clever in his own special way. You will soon learn more.
Finally, Holmes explained it himself. He said calmly,
I am a consulting detective. Here in London we have many detectives. Some are from Scotland Yard, some are private. But when they are in doubt, they come to me. They bring me their problems, and I give them the solution. I am the last court of appeal in crime.
I was astonished. But how can you know the answers when the best detectives cannot? I asked.
It is simple.
Holmes said,
I observe and I deduce. Most people see, but they do not observe. For example, you have been in Afghanistan. That was clear to me when we first met.
I demanded to know how he guessed. Holmes explained,
You were an army doctor. That was obvious from your manner. You have a strong military step, but your face is pale and thin. You are not healthy. Your left arm has an injury, but not bad enough to stop you holding yourself straight. Where could an English army doctor get wounded, become weak from illness, and return home? Clearly in Afghanistan, it was easy.
To me, it sounded like magic. But Holmes insisted it was only logic.
It is my method,
He said.
It will soon be clear to you when we have a case.
At that moment, I felt more curious than ever. Life with Sherlock Holmes was going to be full of surprises. One morning, while Holmes and I were at breakfast, a visitor arrived. He was a young man, very polite, named Detective Tobias Gregson from Scotland Yard. He looked excited.
We need your help, Mr. Holmes,
Gregson said.
There has been a strange murder in an empty house at Lauriston Gardens near Brixton Road. Please come with me.
Holmes jumped up immediately. His eyes shone with interest.
Watson, will you come too? You may enjoy it.
Of course, I agreed. I wanted to see Holmes's special skills in action. We took a cab and Gregson told us what happened. A man's body had been found in an empty house. There were no wounds on him, but the scene looked very suspicious. A ring had also been found. The police were puzzled. Holmes listened quietly, asking a few quick questions. Sometimes he smiled, as if small details already gave him answers. We arrived at the house. It stood empty, with dusty windows and broken shutters. Policemen were outside. Inside, the air smelled damp and dirty. The front room on the ground floor was large but bare. There was very little furniture. On the floor lay the body of a tall man, well-dressed, about 43 years old. His face was twisted with fear and pain. His eyes stared wide open. Holmes bent over the body.
No knife, no bullet,
he whispered.
He has not been robbed either, look. His watch and money are here.
But the strangest thing was on the wall. In dark red letters, someone had written the word rake, Gregson explained.
It means revenge in German. Perhaps that is the clue.
Holmes smiled faintly but said nothing. Holmes moved quickly around the room, on his knees, studying the floor. He examined the footprints carefully. There were 2 sets of steps, one heavy, one light. He even measured them with his tape.
Interesting, very interesting,
he murmured.
The murderer was taller than the victim. He was a man with square-toed boots. He smoked a cigar. He came in with the victim, argued, and then forced him to take poison.
I was amazed. He spoke as if he had seen everything happen. Holmes also noticed something shiny on the floor. He picked it up, a gold wedding ring.
That,
he said,
is very important.
Holmes asked the police to find the cabman who had brought the victim to the house.
The dead man,
Gregson said,
was named Enoch Drebber, an American. He had been staying in a London hotel. His secretary had reported him missing.
Holmes smiled again.
This case will be solved soon,
he said quietly. As we left the house, I could see how excited Holmes was. His eyes sparkled, and his whole face seemed alive.
"Watson, this is a study in Scarlet,"
he said.
"Life is written in blood, and we must read the story."
That evening, Holmes came home with his usual calm smile.
"I've learned something new, Watson,"
he said, lighting his pipe.
"Do you remember the policeman named John Rance who was guarding the house last night?"
Yes, I replied. Gregson mentioned him.
"Well, I went to see him myself. Let me tell you what he said."
Rance had been on duty near Lauriston Gardens around midnight.
At about 2 o'clock, I saw a light in one of the empty houses. I went to the door and found it open. I walked in, and there he was, the dead man, lying on the floor.
"Did you see anyone else?"
Holmes asked him. Rance nodded.
Well, sir, as I was calling for help, a man came out from the shadows. He looked drunk, couldn't walk straight. I thought he was just another drunkard, so I told him to move along. He laughed and walked away.
Holmes leaned forward.
"What did he look like?"
Rance thought for a moment.
Tall, had a red face, and wore a brown coat. I didn't notice much else.
Holmes smiled slightly.
"Then, my dear Rance, you have met our murderer."
The policeman looked shocked.
What? That man? But he was so calm.
"Yes, a clever man always looks calm."
When Holmes finished the story, I was amazed. You mean the killer simply walked away while the police were there?
Exactly. He is bold that will help us catch him.
He stood up, took his hat, and began pacing the room.
"We have a murderer who is clever, confident, and quick. But he made one mistake. He left the ring."
Holmes picked up the gold wedding ring again and turned it in his fingers thoughtfully.
"This little ring will bring him back to us. You'll see, Watson, before long, he'll come looking for it."
Holmes's eyes shone with excitement as he looked out the window into the foggy London night.
"The game has begun,"
he said softly, and I knew that the chase was truly on. The next morning, when I woke up, Holmes was already busy. He was bending over his chemical table, testing something in a glass tube. The air smelled strange, sharp, and bitter.
"Good morning, Watson,"
he said cheerfully.
"Today we're going to set a little trap."
A trap? I repeated.
"Yes?"
Holmes smiled.
"For the man who lost this ring."
He held up the small gold wedding ring that we had found at Lauriston Gardens. Holmes sat down and wrote a short note. Found, in the roadway near Brixton, a lady's gold wedding ring. Apply at 221B Baker Street at 7 o'clock this evening. He showed it to me with amusement.
"If the murderer cares about the ring, he'll send someone to get it."
I laughed. Do you really think he will come? Holmes smiled.
"People will risk much for sentiment, my dear Watson, even murderers."
He gave the note to a boy from the street to take to the newspaper office. The whole day passed quietly. Holmes played his violin for a while and read the papers. I tried to read, but my thoughts were full of the strange case. At 7 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Mrs. Hudson showed in a small, tired-looking woman in a faded shawl. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying.
"I came about the ring.
She said softly.
It belongs to my daughter. She lost it near Brixton yesterday."
Holmes looked at her calmly.
"What's your daughter's name?"
He asked.
Susan Drebber."
At that, I started. Drebber, the same name as the murdered man. Holmes nodded slowly.
"I see,"
he said.
"Please wait a moment."
He left the room as if to fetch the ring, but as soon as he was gone, The woman suddenly turned and ran out of the house. Holmes returned just in time to see her disappear around the corner.
She wasn't a woman at all.
Holmes said with excitement.
A man in disguise. The murderer, or his friend. He came to see if we had found the ring.
I stared at him. How could you tell?
The voice was too low.
Holmes said.
The hands were large and the boots were men's. It was clever, but not clever enough.
He smiled, lighting his pipe again.
Our trap worked, Watson. Now I know he's still in London. He'll try to escape soon and we must be ready.
Holmes leaned back in his chair, smoke curling around his face.
The ring was the key,
He said softly.
Now, we just have to wait for him to make his next move.
I felt a thrill of excitement. Every step of this strange mystery seemed to bring us closer to the truth. 2 days passed. Holmes seemed calm, almost lazy. He played the violin, read the newspaper, and talked little about the case. But I knew that behind his quiet eyes, his mind was working fast. Then, one evening, a loud knock came at our door. It was Detective Gregson from Scotland Yard. He looked very proud and excited.
"I've solved it, Mr. Holmes,"
he cried.
"The murder at Lauriston Gardens, it's all clear now."
Holmes smiled politely.
Really? That's good news. Please, sit down and tell us everything.
Gregson sat by the fire and began his tale.
The murdered man, Enoch Drebber, was staying at Halliday's private hotel with his secretary, Joseph Stangerson. They were both Americans. On the night of the murder, Drebber had too much to drink and behaved badly toward a young woman. Her brother, a man named Arthur Charpentier, became angry.
Gregson paused dramatically.
"I arrested Arthur Charpentier this morning. The evidence is clear. Drebber insulted his sister, and the brother followed him to Brixton and killed him."
Holmes leaned back in his chair, half smiling.
Interesting.
He said softly.
And how do you explain the word rash on the wall?
Gregson shrugged.
"A trick, perhaps. Maybe Drebber tried to write his killer's name before dying. Anyway, the case is solved."
Just then, the door opened again. A second detective, Inspector Lestrade, hurried in. He looked worried and tired.
"Mr. Holmes,"
He said quickly.
"there's been another murder. The victim's name is Joseph Stangerson, Drebber's secretary."
Gregson jumped up.
"What? Stangerson dead too?"
"Yes.
Said Lestrade.
He was found in a hotel near Euston Station. The word Rach was again written on the wall, in blood. There was also a small box of pills beside the body."
Holmes' eyes lit up.
Ah, now the story is complete.
He said quietly. When the two detectives left, Holmes turned to me, his face alive with energy.
Watson, everything fits now. The case is not about revenge in London. It began long before, in America.
In America? I repeated, surprised.
Yes, 2 men, 1 story, and 1 long pursuit. But don't worry, by tomorrow, the murderer will be in our hands.
I watched him as he stood by the window, deep in thought. His calm voice hid the excitement that filled the room. Whatever was coming next, I knew it would be extraordinary. The next morning, Holmes was up early. He looked calm but very focused.
Watson, today we shall meet our murderer.
I was surprised. You already know who it is? Holmes smiled slightly.
Yes, I only need 1 small piece of proof. I have sent a message to the newspapers. You'll see soon enough.
Holmes had written an advertisement found at the scene of the Brixton murder, a gold wedding ring. The owner may claim it at 221B Baker Street. Do you think the killer will come for it? I asked. Holmes nodded.
He must. That ring means something important to him.
All morning we waited. Then, about noon, there was a knock at the door. It was an old woman in a black dress and bonnet. She said nervously,
I came about the ring. It belongs to my daughter. She lost it last week.
Holmes looked at her carefully.
Please, sit down, madam. May I ask her name?
The woman hesitated.
Her name is Sally Sawyer.
Holmes handed her the ring, but as she reached for it, he suddenly leaned forward.
Watson, stop her!
He shouted. But the woman was fast. She ran out of the room, down the stairs, and into a waiting cab. Holmes stood at the window, smiling.
It's all right. That was no old woman. That was our murderer in disguise.
A few hours later, Holmes went out for a walk. When he came back, he was carrying a small box. Have you caught him? I asked eagerly.
Soon, I've sent a message asking a cab to come and pick me up. But it's not I who will go for a ride. It's he.
We waited. Soon, there was a knock at the door. A cabman stood outside. He was tall, with a rough beard, and looked perfectly ordinary.
Cab for Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
He asked.
Yes, come in for a moment. I'll be ready in a second.
The man stepped inside. Holmes turned suddenly, holding the small box. He opened it and threw its contents straight into the cabman's face. The man gave a loud cry and fell to the floor. Holmes bent over him.
Watson, this man is the murderer. His name is Jefferson Hope.
Later that evening, when Hope recovered, Holmes questioned him calmly. Hope looked at us with tired eyes.
You are clever, Mr. Holmes. You saw what no one else could. Yes, I killed Drebber and Stangerson, but they deserved it. They destroyed the woman I loved.
His voice broke with emotion.
I followed them from America to London. I wanted justice, nothing more.
Holmes listened silently. I could see he felt both respect and pity for this man who had suffered so much. When the police took Jefferson Hope away, Gregson and Lestrade still looked confused. Holmes explained everything to them, how he had read the footprints, studied the cigar ashes, and connected the American ring to a long story of revenge. When he finished, Gregson said,
Well, Mr. Holmes, you've done what Scotland Yard could not. The case is closed.
Holmes only smiled and lit his pipe.
It was simple, only logic and a little observation.
That night, I wrote in my diary, "This was my first case with Sherlock Holmes, a strange story of love, hate, and revenge. I believe it is only the beginning of many more adventures to come."